All right, we're live. Hey, everybody.
There we go.
And we have no phones in here, so we should be good. Somebody popped in. Ian says hello and welcome, one and all.
Hopefully more than one.
Well, they popped in and then they popped out, so it takes a minute. Yeah, there's Aaron. Hi, Aaron. You made it. Jana says, hi, I missed you. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here too, Jono. We always appreciate having you along. Oh, there, my viewer thing caught up. You never know for sure when you have that information coming up there how accurate it is. How are you all doing this week? Eve says, Merry meet, my friends. Hi, Eve. Nice to see ya. Everybody come in, say hello.
Yeah, I don't know if we've told everybody that we're going to be going back to our cabin power spot.
Yeah, I've mentioned it.
Did you mention it? Okay.
Yep.
And
But I'm really looking forward to it. Eve says, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Awesome. How are you guys? Well, we're going to be doing a short trip tomorrow. We're going down to Smith River in Lower Oregon to Upper California to visit a friend for a couple of days. Was a little bit concerned about the fire that's happening in that direction, but checked the stats and where it is and where the smoke is, and it looks like it's more inland and it shouldn't be a bother. So it'll be nice to get down to the river and just kind of hang out with our friend from way back when. Ian's known him for a long time. He knew him when I met him. So it'll be a good little test of our vehicle and make sure it's working for our major trip in August to go to the power spot, which I keep dreaming about. So, yay! Sheila says, hi, good to see you all. Sheila in West Virginia. Hi, Sheila. And thanks for the email. I appreciate that. Rita says, hello, have not been in a while and troubles connecting. Merry meet. Well, I hope things stabilize. Rita S. says, safe travels. Great to see you guys. Yes. Ian's been working on the van and making sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. We had a few things we had to update and whatnot, but this will be a good test. So we'll figure out if there's any other issues, and we'll be in populated areas going down. So we should be good.
yeah, because when we go to our cabin, that's not a.
No. That is seriously not populated at all.
Yeah, no, it's.
And I'm really curious to see what happens this time, since it's been so long since we were able to go out there. And, yeah, it's one of those places that it just sort of seeps into your bones. It really has affected both of us long term. And, yeah, it's interesting. Tondo says, do you mind if I get right into it? I've got multiple people in my life who don't acknowledge their hardship because other people have it worse. How do I talk sense to these people? It is not a competition.
Yeah, there's always somebody that has it worse. No matter how bad your situation is, in most cases, there's always somebody that has it worse.
Yes, absolutely.
It doesn't
And
mean you should accept bad conditions because of it.
And that's what I say when I talk to people who've gone through like horrific abuse and so forth, and they know my history, and they're like, I didn't have it as bad as you. It's not a competition. Any amount of abuse or whatever is too much, and we need to stop normalizing levels of dysfunction as saying, well, that's not as dysfunctional as this other situation. We need to try and address dysfunction, period, and eradicate it as well as we can where we find it. So Rita says, hello, Eve. Eve says, I would say to them, ask them to ask themselves, what would my mother say? Well, that's not necessarily a good approach. It depends on their family dynamics. My mother and I have completely different definitions of love and boundaries and everything else that there is. So it's going to depend on the situation, I would say. But I think that, it's not a competition works no matter what, because it's straightforward, and the thing is that people are comparing. It's like they're comparing their issues with another group of people or another person or whatever,
I might
minimizing it.
The two people could have exactly the same physical issue happening, and one might have a lot harder time of it because they're a lot less mentally and emotionally prepared to cope with it, or physically prepared to cope with it, things like that. So even though you look at the same incident, one person may be suffering a lot more than another person under the same conditions, depending on their mental and emotional.
Right, so the comparisons really
aspects.
fall flat when you think of it that way, because it's all about, it's subjective, your personal experience of what happened to you. And I think when people are trying to delve into that, like with the shadow work and so forth, and start to deal with those issues, their first instinct is to try and it's in the past, let it go, don't worry about it, move on, etc. But often that doesn't work, because you need to understand how it's changed you and in what ways you need to shift yourself back to be different than what they tried to make you or your circumstances made you into.
Yes, and I know people who've undergone way worse stuff than I have in some respects, and yet if mine had been any worse, I probably would have been dead or committed suicide or something. So
yeah,
some of the stuff I went through was like the maximum that I could handle, even though people have withstood much worse. I couldn't have.
Well, it's like with pain levels. As a massage therapist, we use the scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is as much as pain as you've ever experienced, and 7 is considered comfortable discomfort. And the amount of pressure I put on a spot as a therapist doesn't depend upon the amount of pressure I'm pushing, but how much the person I'm touching feels it. I've had some people that their sensitivity was so intense and so high that I could only lay my finger on their skin, and that was almost too much pressure for them. So getting out of the idea that these are things that can be measured like scientifically and dispassionately and so forth. So Grumpy Al says it's kind of invalidating the other person's experiences. Yeah, that too. Julia says, slips into my seat with a smile and softly calls out a greeting. Happy to see everyone here. Hi, Julia. Eve says, I suppose whatever mother you believe in is what you should listen to. Well, that's true too. Rita says, hi, Julia. Jono says, that's good, Eve. It's so frustrating. There are starving children in Africa, so it's okay that the cashier at the pharmacy was an a-hole. One of these people is my mom. It's tough. Brick wall nonsense. I'm sorry. And you can't teach anyone anything they're not ready to learn. And that's something to remember. It's like, you have to sometimes let go of the whole notion that they're going to actually understand or comprehend or listen or take in what you have to say. Because change only happens from within. It only happens from a deep place inside where the person involved decides that they want to change and shift their view.
Either that or it happens because something so traumatic happens to them that they are forced to change, in which case it's
still...
it could be a positive improvement, but yeah.
Yeah. It has to be there. Eve says, you can't go wrong if you follow that. Julia says, hey there, Rita. Sundrop says, hi, Siofra. Hi, Ian. Hi, everyone. Hi, Sundrop. Carol Lee says, hello, everyone. Hi, Carol Lee. Eve says, Jono, that sucks. Hi, Julia and Sundrop. Rita says, hi, Sundrop. Everyone's saying hi to everybody else. Just great. Okay. So everybody now has said hi to one another. Nope, there's one more.
Everybody's now high.
That's right, they're all high.
Okay.
So the subject of language came up for me this week in a post on Facebook that I ran across. The idea of using derogatory terms to describe another group of people, or my personal take of a derogatory term. We were talking about mundanes and muggles. That people were, that tendency that a lot of groups or individuals seem to have to do the comparison thing, which is sort of what we're talking about here anyway, is like comparing themselves to other people and trying to be above where they're at and feel superior to them or feel less than them because they're not where they're at. And it's the comparisons that are the problem, because we're all where we are, and the only competitive thing you should have is with yourself. It's like, that's always been my attitude. Like in school, I always wanted to get an A, not because I wanted to be better than other people, but because the A represented to me as much as my teacher could teach me, and I wanted to learn as much as the teacher had to teach. And so I saw that as a success, that I had learned all that they had to, of value to, or not value, depending, in my direction. And same with, yoga and so forth like that. In class settings, they ingrain that in us. It's like you're competing with your own body, your own limitations, working within those limitations, and then to stretch your limits to create new boundaries that you can then become comfortable in. But you're not competing with the person in the mat next to you or across the room and going like, wow, look at them, they're so much more flexible than I am.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things between Siofra and I. For example, when we play cards together, we're not competing against each other in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than most people when they play cards, they're competing and
who's gonna win? Ha ha ha!
But when we play cards with each other, we just we're trying to do the best we can do, but we're not really competing with each other. So,
yep.
Whoever wins, it doesn't matter.
So Dalton Road Ruck says, "Hi, I finally was able to catch a live. I've been binge watching your videos for weeks." Well, welcome to our channel. We love it when people binge watch us. He says, "It's true what Siofra is saying about." Well, yeah, I mean, comparison is the worst unmotivator, that's for sure. Because like we were saying earlier, there's always someone who's either had it worse or had it better, has more, has less. It's like, yeah, it doesn't seem to work. Jono says, language is a great topic. You called me out on using the word muggle a few weeks ago. You were correct. Our internal language is another topic. For example, a slur in your mind is the same to the Akasha.
Valid point.
Yeah, and the thing that I found interesting about the exchange that I had, it was about people, being proud of their progress and comparing themselves to other people who they thought were less than them. So that was the subject. And I brought up that my issue, with using those terms, the derogatory terms, to take a group of people that aren't doing what you're doing and put them out there and make them less than you. It's like, maybe they're not a witch, maybe they're not doing magic, maybe they're not a pagan, but they're where they are. And it's not up to us to decide that what they're doing is less than what we're doing, kind of thing, and that sort of stuff. And I was bringing that up because that was the response to the original poster who brought it up. And this person decided to give me a history lesson on some of the terminology from way back in the past, but never said during their education of me whether or not they agreed with them being derogatory terms or not, which I thought was interesting because they got off on the intellectual thing, and I'm using, current stuff like Babylon 5 and Harry Potter and so forth as the reinstitution of these terms and into our public mind and whatnot, and they're wanting me to know that some of them have been around for a long time, and I'm like,
yeah, it doesn't make them any bit.
I don't know how that's a point, but okay. It was interesting. Rita says, I love that. I never thought of getting an A in that manner. We'll keep that in mind as I have just enrolled back in college. Yeah. And cool. The things that we say to ourselves, we know about negative self-talk and how damaging that can be. The things that we say to others, language is part of magic. It's like the spoken word has power, and the more aware you are of how much power it has, the more influence you can have over things around you. So it's really important to consider and think about the language that we use and what it means and what it does. And I don't see those terms any different than homophobic remarks or, racist remarks or what have you. It's like they're all in the same cauldron in my mind. I can't think of another word right now. So Bobby says, Siofra, do you know if a deity can reincarnate in the flesh and is on Earth now? I think it's highly unlikely that a human body could actually incarnate completely as a god or goddess form. Certainly from a psychological point of view, I can see that that can happen, and people can get really in touch with that specific energy. But if they are truly a deity, then they should be able to move a mountain, snuff out a fire with a thought, I mean, if we're looking at deities, instead of, I don't know what, subjective kinds of...
The question I would have would be, why would they want to in particular?
Well, and why be in a human, specifically? I mean, that's the assumption that deities are only there for people. What about all the rest of life? I mean, you could have like a god in a deer, or, it's like probably easier because they don't have things in their head to get in the way. But,
well, it's said this earth zone of ours is a place to improve ourselves and get rid of a lot of our issues and things and move on to higher spheres. So it would even theoretically take a lot of energy for a deity to do that and have a good reason, and who knows what that would be, since their motivations are usually beyond just the human realms. They're almost more like a force with personality or something, I guess, as far as, relating to us. There's a lot of cosmic aspects. If you're talking like the Indian ones like Vishnu or one of those, there's a lot of cosmic aspects and affecting you on a mental plane and things like that, but
yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times that strokes the ego to think that you either have met someone who is an incarnated god or that you are an incarnated god. And it begs the question, what would be the point if you were of announcing it?
Yeah.
Except for ego.
It's not a bad question, though, considering that Barden reincarnated the spirit that was called Franz Barden on this earth, reincarnated in the body of Franz Barden, and he was an advanced master. He had purposes for doing that, though, one of which was to publish his books, and another was to answer the prayers.
But he wasn't a god, he was
right.
He was a human spirit
and
had an arrangement
in doing human stuff, yes,
right,
in association with the human world to help people out. So yeah, I think potentially, I suppose theoretically one could, but I can't think of anything I've ever run across that makes me think one has, or any reason why one would have. Most of the higher advanced beings stay with their own things, whatever it is they're doing.
Okay, so Lod says, hi everyone, bit late but glad to be here. Scott says, hi Scott. Sundrop says, I heard another witch say not to pray but to manifest instead. What you want, do you agree?
Depends on your goal.
Well, it depends on your definition of prayer, and for some reason I'm having trouble getting my computer to do what I want it to. It's driving me nuts. Prayer is the idea of trying to get some force or whatever to do something for you, and manifesting is figuring out how to get it to do it for yourself. So it's a much more powerful place to come from, but prayer can be thankful,
Well, prayer can also be used to create an identification with the deity if you want to take on the identification of that deity's properties. So I do that. Prayer to gurus, if you want to take on their physical properties or cities, which is like special powers they have or things like that. The best way to approach those things, one of the best ways, is through prayer to deity, if you want to call it prayer, but you have to stay on, it's kind of a slippery slope. You know, you're not offering yourself to the deity or something in that case, but I would consider praying okay if you're making it, because the best way to get in touch with the deity, or to, if you want to say, think like Aphrodite thinks, or be genuine or something like that, is to pull those abilities to you through worshiping that particular being or deity, but you have to be careful there too, of course.
Yeah, I think the word prayer is sort of a charged phrase here. And like the way Christians mean prayer and a lot of other religions is that you are you're giving up your own power and handing over your fate to a higher power and then asking them to intervene on your behalf. In general, that would be what I think that the word is, meaning, what they're talking about. And we don't work under or for our gods, we work with them as equals, different but equal. And so it's sort of a different energetic dynamic. And certainly, telling them thank you and saying, positive things, giving them poetry or so forth, or decorating your altar with their likenesses and things. I don't consider that prayer so much as making a nice house, a home, an inviting space, an appropriate manner and stuff like that, that will welcome their presence in so that you can have an interaction with them. But, manifesting is like, the thing I like about magic is no matter what it is that's going on, I can always find something to do to give me back my power. That I have something I can do for myself or for someone else, whatever it happens to be, whatever the situation is. And I'm not left just completely at the whim of fate and the gods.
You're not left, you're not, in that sense, you're more independent. You're not relying on them for your success. You can get in touch with them out of friendliness or whatever if you want, which is fine. But you're not, you're not relying on them to solve your problems for you, and that's where manifesting comes in, and that's the positive aspects of manifesting things.
Okay. I don't know why this is doing this to me.
What is it doing?
Well, it keeps not going down where I can get rid of that, but
hit the escape button, yeah.
Nope. No, I don't want to do that.
Nope.
Okay. This will go away in a minute. So, Bobby says praying is important also. It helps getting inward. I wouldn't suppress that. Perhaps a hybrid. There we go. Like. Maybe I should make it come out.
I don't know why you don't just pop it out. It seems like...
Well, it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Let me try that. Just hit that.
No.
Pop out. Okay. Maybe this will work better. It's like my computer is just kind of weird today. Yeah, now I can do this. Okay. Right. All right. So Sunjob said it. Bobby, yeah, she made it seem like manifesting is more powerful than praying to God. Well, it is in the sense that you are doing something for yourself. Jono says if you pray correctly, it is an Akashic vault. That's how it works. At least, and that's how my language for it.
It can be. Yeah, if you do everything correctly.
Dalton says, what would you both say was the toughest lesson you've had to go through so far in your path? Well, I recommend watching the video that I did on the shamanic dismemberment. I would say that is probably one of the toughest things that I've had to go through, and not something I recommend anybody ever do. I mean, I don't know how I managed to get out of it and come back to sanity and
Well,
not be running around with, hallucinations constantly.
since you weren't really prepared for it, it kind of happened by accident.
Well, even if you do it on
Yeah.
purpose, it's still kind of intense. But yeah, I would say that was definitely the most intense experience, and learning how to be grounded and sane and navigate this world that I'm in and accept it for what it is instead of for what I would like it to be, or seeing it for what it's not. Reality in itself is kind of a huge thing. I was thinking about the positive projections that I've done in the past and how difficult that lesson was to learn.
It's basically about this for people who are not familiar with that aspect. It's about having your mind and your emotions totally ripped open and torn apart, and then you have to put yourself together from the remains.
Yeah, you have to build yourself back.
Back to being human and being normal, yeah.
And the thing about that experience is that every decision I made from that moment on, I was shaping and becoming myself, who I am now, who I wanted to be. And once you've done that, you don't look at the world the same way anymore, because your decisions are, I don't know how to describe it, but you don't think the same way. It's like your complete,
Well, it is.
your
mind has been
destruction,
torn apart and restructured. And,
right,
yeah.
the destruction of your way of thinking and way of being and everything else, right down to the fraction. In my experience,
and-
I felt like I had about a grain of sand left of me that I refused to let go of, and then I had to build it from there. And I probably hallucinated 24 hours a day for about a year after that happened, and
Yeah, well-
trying to build myself back in.
Well, those things can lead to superior results. The majority of people end up in an insane asylum or don't survive it or commit suicide or something when they go through that. It's
Well,
not,
yeah, I mean, between my childhood and that, the fact that I didn't end up committing suicide or being in an insane asylum is kind of amazing to me, but I'm not taking credit for it because
Yeah,
it
you
could
have to
easily
be-
have happened.
You have to be kind of crazy to choose to do that thing. Either that or spent 3/4 of a lifetime getting ready for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who would undergo that willingly.
but what about you, as far as the question goes?
Well, it'd be the same thing. My experience was caused by totally different stuff and everything, but basically that was it, When you learn that you can't rely on your mind and it only goes so far and it gets ripped apart and you have to remake it. I mean, I can't imagine anything tougher and surviving it, on a mental and an intellectual level. You go around thinking you're insane, you think you've gone insane, not understanding what the process is that you're undergoing. Everything gets ripped away, your friends, family, everything gets stripped from you. There's nothing left. And you have to hope at that point, it's almost like you either have some inertia that gets you through it, or you just stay crazy and die, stop living. Crossing the abyss, it's a pretty serious thing, and I underwent it accidentally also, which is highly not recommended. But
Yeah.
again, it was due to trauma I had in my life that caused it. So,
That's the ultimate test, the shamanic
but
test.
once you recover from it, you have some things. It's a lot harder to get caught up in people's bullshit because you've discharged all that stuff from yourself. You get rid of a lot of those judgments. Most people judge themselves by what other people think, or what their heroes or idols or people they look up to might think about it, and then they judge their behavior by that, and it's all built in by our society. But once you go through something like this, you stop judging yourself by that. You judge yourself more on a unique stand and overview, like a little bit, all those things have less of an effect on you. Culture, all those built-in things just don't affect you much because you've seen that all that can be destroyed and you can still live through it. I don't know how else to describe it any better. That's probably way too much for our little live show. But yeah, that would be the toughest thing I ever went through too.
Yeah, it made me think of one of the things that happened that was very vivid for me during that time was sitting outside on a hill looking at a tree, and the leaves were covered with what other people would think of as demonic forms, just climbing and crawling all over it. And in that moment, when I was looking at that, I knew that I could make a decision to see the tree for the life form and the beautiful thing that it was, or to allow that stuff that was there to cover it up and obliterate it and be stuck there. And so I started making them go away and forcing myself to see each individual leaf until I could get that back. And that was the way for everything, for food, and I mean, it was quite the process.
Yeah, and it's very nice to be able to judge something released of your human concepts of it, because there's so many things you don't realize are all tied in that aren't really relevant. I mean, what you think about trees might depend on whether you're a logger or not, or whether you're a tree hugger, or the same thing for animals and things. And then if you have this experience and then you just see a tree, it's not a tree to be cut down, it's not a tree to be saved, it's just a living life form, so that frees you up a whole lot. But yeah, I sure wouldn't recommend that method of going about it.
No.
It's harsh.
So Bobby says, Sundrop, she could be right depending on someone's priority. I know it's possible to shape our future when we can write what we want directly at the Akashic records.
Theoretically. And it is possible for a few people who've worked their way through to that point, but most people in the Akashic stuff don't have enough control of their thoughts and things, and then their random thoughts will get out and cause them as much harm as anything else. You have to watch that.
So Sundrop said she meant not to pray to God because he doesn't always answer, is what she said. I think she meant in Christianity. Well, I definitely don't pray to that God, and I actually don't think I pray to any gods. I just kind of acknowledge them and share things with them.
So if I prayer, I don't expect to get, I guess I don't try to ask for physical things except for unless it's a real emergency or something. I might say, give me some help, but yeah.
I'm always saying, if it's okay, if you think this will help me for sure, for real, if it's...
Yeah, it's a big subject.
Yeah, a whole subject. Bobby says, according to my experience, it depends on which god. Some do answer, some do not.
That's true,
Lul
too.
says, hello. Hi, Lul.
The Santorians have more of a tendency to actually answer and give you physical results.
And Sundrop says, at Bobby, the Christian god is, I figured who we were talking about. Yes. Bobby says, hi, Lul. Laud says, I often use a pendulum for answers to certain things and was thinking of using it with a pendulum board. Does that require more protection? Well, I don't use pendulums, so I can't really say, but I'd
say no.
I don't think that would be the case.
No, pendulums are recommended for something like that. And again, unless you're trying to attract something negative or something, usually that just doesn't happen. You can, of course, always do a banishing ritual of the pentagram beforehand if you're worried about it, but generally I wouldn't consider it an issue with just using a pendulum.
So Jono says, YouTube changed stuff. I saw another streamer struggle on Friday. Well, I think it's my computer in this case, but thank you. Bobby says, when working with a pendulum, I would have a selenite piece very near to cleanse the space. Yeah.
Sounds like a good idea. Yeah.
I love the selenite stuff. Rita says, that sounds so horrible. Well, yes, it was. Bobby says, the abyss or the void.
Kind of the abyss, what they call crossing the abyss. I consider the void a little bit different subject according to the Hindu thinking, as more like the Akasha. It's the total, it's at one and the same time the total absence of everything, so it's a massive void, but at the same time it's the potential for everything, so it's infinitely full at the same time as being infinitely empty. So
infinite possibilities.
Yeah, so the void is, you can have an experience of the void, being lost in that deep, extreme emptiness. which is
I called that the Great Silence, which
Yeah,
I didn't
that's-
care for.
yes,
I didn't like that.
which isn't quite the same as what they call crossing the abyss or the abyss experience.
Yeah, I found myself in a place where I don't even know how to describe that. The silence. It's like the space between stars where there's absolutely nothing, and or silence or stillness. And maybe stillness was the word I used. But when I was in that state, I was also in touch with the Akashic records and streams of time, and I could look into the past or the future or whatever else about a subject in the moment that I wanted to. And it was interesting, but the dispassionate, like, disassociation was kind of frightening. I didn't like it, being human. So Bobby says, I enjoyed the video you put, Enlivening Statue. Thank you. We did two, one on how to do it and then one us doing it. I decided it'd be good to do a demonstration. It's kind of funny, somebody commented on my healing demonstration video I did and said I talked too much. I was wasting energy, too much blah blah, as they put it. And I'm like, this is a demonstration and teaching video. This is not me actually just doing a healing, in which case you wouldn't know what was going on because I'd be internalizing it. But sometimes the blah blah is necessary. But anyway, thank you. We're happy. We weren't sure. Rita says, I'm having the awareness of the fact that there is truly no way for us to truly have a concept of what reality actually is. In every interaction we have, there is so many perceptions at play.
I would add a but to that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so my but to that would be what you need to do to perceive actual reality is to be able to quiet all your minds and all your emotions and enter a totally still state, mentally, emotionally, and physically, at which point you can come closest to apprehending reality as is possible. If you can hold that state for like a half hour or something, you will get a unique experience of oneness with the all, with everything, and of being that which many people have called God. Your perception can change completely if you can quiet down all these things, including your mind, restfully and peacefully for a few minutes. It's called samadhi as a start of the indication of that type of thing. And it is attainable, but it takes lots of effort and work. So,
And also, reality is constantly shifting. And
Well,
we are all the center of our own
Yes.
universe. And you're right.
and
That's
the
one
thing.
of the things, if we're looking for like a reality that everybody can see and everybody can agree to, since we're in so many different places, so many different stages of development, evolution, perception, culturally, etc., the best you can do is to be the center of your own and to try and accept reality when it comes to you for what it is instead of what you want it to be, which is
Yes,
the
and
positive
that includes
and negative projections.
That includes the current moment. You have to be in the current moment to perceive reality that way. You have to be absolutely current. You can't think about the past. Well, you can't think at all. But that puts you automatically in the current moment where you're only experiencing the moment as much as possible for us humans. So
And
we
it's
can-
okay for us not to be able to comprehend
but
everything
we
all
can-
the time.
We can get a lot closer to it than normal human consciousness is.
So, Dalton says, that sounds so horrible, I'm sorry. It's hard enough just going through shadow work.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby says shadow work. I used to call it psychotherapy instead. Well, it is, but it's a little bit deeper than just regular psychotherapy because you can use magic to go into deeper levels of your unconscious.
You know, I survived it, but in the end, I'm glad it happened to me because it changed me so drastically. The person I am a much better person than I used to be. Even though it almost killed me, I almost committed suicide a couple times and didn't,
Thank you.
but I came close. So yeah, it's a horrible experience, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But now that it's happened, I'm glad I'm a much better person than I would have been, and I'm glad for the perceptions I have now because it got rid of all my, a lot of my preconceived notions and prejudices. And of course, then some of them try to come back a little bit, and you have to work with that. But yeah, so overall, I'm glad it happened, but I would have ever have wished it on myself or tried to make it happen on purpose.
I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of experiences. So Bobby says, Siofra, what would you consider signs that you are having a spiritual awakening? I know there can be ringing in the ears and food habits that change. I think it's going to be different for everybody. A spiritual awakening, it should be something we're doing all the time. I mean, because we are a spirit in a body. So, defining it and separating it out from becoming a human being makes things a little fuzzy. Certainly as far as awakening your psychic abilities and so forth, there are definite signs when Kundalini is awakening, which often is considered related to the subject of your spiritual awakening kind of thing.
Yeah.
But being more aware of what you do in the world and what you do to yourself and caring for the results of that. I mean, I was taking my ritual bath this morning, and I was thinking, yes, I need to take care of the body so that I can be here and talk to you guys and, interact with the world. And it's my responsibility to do so. It's everyone's going to have their own definition of what it means to be spiritual, but I think being well-rounded human in all the different aspects, which includes taking care of the regular every day-to-day stuff and being able to take care of yourself, your needs, your body, your relationships, and so forth, as well as your inner self and your needs for that, the need to connect with other forms of consciousness and life, to know that we're not completely alone. And I think that is what we see as a spiritual awakening, is that realization that we are connected to a fabric, a web of other forms of life out there, and consciousnesses, including the stones and all the different kinds of beings that exist out there, and it sort of puts us in a better perspective. So you're not the most important thing in the universe is a good step. I don't know. It's kind of hard to put a list on. They have lots of lists on the internet where you're feeling depressed, you're too sensitive. Like, these are signs everyone goes through, so I'm not sure how they relate.
But also, spiritual awakening can have zillions of signs. What I've seen is almost the opposite. There's so many signs you can't hardly attribute one to a particular thing. I mean, Kundalini causes a lot of different ones and physical seeming effects. And
like the ringing and the buzzing and the
seeing lights in your head, lights with your eyes
which
closed.
We have. It's like
things like
all that fun
yeah.
stuff. But yeah, and that's the thing, is we're trying to communicate things that are experiential with words, which are by definition not. They sort of, we hope that words excite the mind to find commonality within the person that we're speaking to, so that we know we're on the same page and we're talking about the same thing, but in reality we have no idea if we are, and if the other person hears what we mean by what we say, which is always interesting. But anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I like the imagery of being surrounded by, like, your aura was made of stained glass of all different colors, and you put something out to somebody and it goes through one color, and then it has to get through their stained glass shield around them, and it might tint it a completely different color, and by the time they get it, might not be what you're trying to say.
Well, I have experienced that one directly, which is very bizarre, and probably most of us have, where you say what seems to be to you a very simple, straightforward sentence, like, "Thank you for lunch." And then the person says, "Well, people are always taking advantage of me, and they never thank me for anything that I do." And you're like, "What?" And that happens amazingly often, because that's what Ian's talking about, is that shifting around inside the other person. One thought leads to another, which leads to another, and then what comes out of their mouth is something that seems as close to what you said as the moon is from the earth kind of thing. It's like, what? I didn't even know what to do with that. But yeah, it's interesting. So Jono says that to Laud, the most important thing is who you are asking for answers. Tarot, runes, scrying, your guardians, your ancestors. You're asking for external input. My pendulum is for my higher self. All other divination is contact with the Tao for me. Good. Rita says, thanks for that, Ian. You can spell that for me so I can find out more. I actually did
think
that
she's
for
talking
several
about
minutes, not as long as you suggested. The void thing?
Samadhi, I think.
Samadhi. Okay. Eve says, I do believe that prayer is synonyms with spells, synonymous. Yeah, that's in some people's language, but I don't think it is. Because spells are more like laying out the pattern that you want the universe to follow, and prayer is more, look, I have this problem, can you figure out a pattern and put it on me? So it's got, in my view, a completely different dynamic with yourself. So yeah, it's like a set of instructions to the universe that says, this is what I'm dealing with, this is the result I would like to have, here's some energy to go along to help you do that. And prayer is help, make something go away. But everyone's got different definitions. Bobby says, Eve, I used to use prayers to create a spell. I project light into it. Eve says, Bobby smile, I think. And Jono says, Eve, I have it the other way around. For me, a spell is a physical, mental prayer to the universe. Jacqueline says, hello, Siofra and Ian. Hi, Jacqueline. Thank you for being here. Eve says, yes, Ian is correct. Always call in reinforcement if you feel called to do so. And Ian spelled Samadhi.
And by the way, the definition of Samadhi, according to a dictionary from Oxford Languages, says a state of an intense concentration achieved through meditation. In Hindu yoga, this is regarded as the final stage at which union with the divine is reached. So that's your view of reality, as much as it can be.
Bobby says, I just know there are much more runes that were created than the usual actual 22 or 24 letters that they have. Rita says, yes, thanks so much. Bobby says, no problem, Rita. Aaron says, I had a weird feeling yesterday at work, like something was going to happen. Later I found out a car versus train accident happened not too far from me. I'm sorry. Premonitions, especially about things you can't do anything about, are uncomfortable and sometimes annoying. I get them. I had, I think I met the spirit that's helping Ian with his painting, that he's created a paint being or something like that when I was taking my bath today. Because all of a sudden, the bathroom smelled like oil paint.
Well, I'm not surprised. I've been meditating when I'm painting, so I'm focusing on it very intensely sometimes. So, yeah, I haven't tried to purposely do that, but I think it's probably happening naturally.
Eve says, ha ha, laugh out loud, Siofra, you said, ha ha. Bobby says, Ina, I feel you're very philosophical tonight more than usual, hee hee. Dalton says, I feel like an awakening starts with just waking up and questioning the world around you and how things are connected. Yeah. I mean, being interested in the world around you. My granddaughter and I had a conversation about this because she and I talk about a lot of different stuff, and we were having a side conversation about geopolitical stuff in Switzerland and Sweden and, NATO and whatnot. And we had some inaccurate information. When I found the correct information, I sent her a message. And she was talking to the people she was working for about the conversation, and they're like, you and your Nana talk about that stuff? Like, you guys are weird. We're like, we're interested in everything. I mean, I'm interested in everything. And when I find out I don't want to do something, then I know I'm not interested in doing that, but it doesn't mean I'm not interested in it, if you know what I mean. So I think that it keeps you youthful and engaged and everything else, because especially as you get older, if you decide I've learned enough, I don't want to learn anymore, well, then you're just sort of dying. That's kind of the way that works. Rita says, cool, thanks. Bobby says, Siofra, do you do soul journeys often? And if so, how much do you think they are real and mean something? Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by soul journeys, like delving into my past lives or going into astral mental plane and doing stuff, you'll need to give me a little bit more.
My guess would be more like the soul retrieval, where you go back to your past to bring back a part of your soul that was stuck in some past event or something. But that would just be a guess.
Okay, we'll let Bobby
clarification,
clarify that so I know what I'm answering. Jacqueline says, Bobby, I don't know what about that. There's only 27 characters in the Hebrew alphabet, but they work similarly to the runic symbols. Eve says, Dalton, that is how it happens sometimes. Yes, just paying attention.
Yep.
Bobby says, agreed, Jacqueline, just a hunch, but Odin was a huge creator, and for me, there has to be runes for other things, maybe, than used for languages.
Symbols, yes. I don't know that, I mean, the runes are limited to being what they are, but there are symbols that you can use the same way and that work the same way. I don't know that runes, I mean, really it would be the same thing. The way the runes work, you charge them up, each rune becomes a little talisman on its own. So there are other
They are hieroglyphic as well as just specific
yes,
letters.
they're not
We've
just called
anglicized
runes, though,
some
yeah.
of the letters, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I mean, you know,
A lot of them were pictographic.
right. That's what I meant with hieroglyphic,
Well,
pictograph.
yeah.
They're same kind of thing. But the Icelandic language is the most complicated language on the planet, and so yeah, I mean they're still able to read texts that were written over 1,000 years ago because when they went from the Nordic countries to Iceland, they did not change their language, and then they were isolated for a long time and kept it. So it's sort of interesting. So Bobby says, Siofra, I meant like astral travel, but witnessing your soul doing it. Well, yeah, I've seen from my body, I've seen my spirit doing things, if that's what you mean. I've had that happen a couple of times. It's interesting to actually see your other body outside of yourself. And when that happened, it was at the beginning of the horrific experience we were talking about earlier. That was sort of like the very first start. And I was facing a wall, and I was looking at the wall, and I could see the TV screen, the show that was coming on the wall, and I thought, that's weird, why can I see that? And I turned and looked, and I saw myself floating in front of the TV watching the show. It was Born Free was the show that was coming on, and I liked the music. Apparently I was very drawn to it like a flame. But yeah, so I think that what we went through would have been sort of like a soul retrieval, that kind of thing. Because I saw all my past deaths and what happened to me after I died, and then I had to figure out how to incorporate the things that I lost and accept them back into myself, and then, work with that. So, yeah.
I didn't have anything like that in particular. Past life stuff.
Jono says, now I'm curious, when you guys do divination, tarot, scrying, runes, throwing bones, where do you think you are getting information from? Ian, Siofra, and chat. The universe, time doesn't exist.
Well,
so I'm getting sometimes possibilities. There are so many things that are aiming in the same direction, it becomes a given that this is going to happen, and then that will come through. Sometimes I get messages from the other side. I've had a few of those things where I've had a clanging warning bell wake me up in the middle of the night and give me a warning, which is like a whole different level of stuff.
Of course, that's not really divination since you didn't do anything to.
Well, no, but
that.
the funniest thing is when I look in a crystal ball or a mirror or something, often what I see is what's actually going to happen next, like someone's going to drop it or kick it and it's going to fall down.
So see, that would be like a clairvoyance.
Yeah. And I think that divination is accessing your clairvoyant ability. It sort of gives you an excuse to have information that you don't believe on a conscious level that you can get, and so you can use the cards or whatever as the means to get them. I was thinking about, we were watching a show the other day, and someone was doing palm reading in the show, and I was thinking about the fact that I did palm reading for fun a few times, and this one guy I met, and I got the name of his mother who wasn't his biological mother, and I knew that. I got all this information, and I know it wasn't actually the palm that was telling me. It was, I was holding his palm and saying, this is how I know this, so that people wouldn't freak out. But mostly it just sort of comes through the airways. It's just like impressions that are there.
But I would like to add too that there are some specific types of divination methods. The one like in Santeria where they use coconuts for divination, the coconuts symbolize the interior of the head and such, the brain with its fluid in there. But they use a coconut for divination. There's a specific deity that operates that one that you have to make offerings to, and then that deity helps you with the divination.
But that's the same thing in my mind. It is a specific thing, but it's specifically to allow you to let yourself see it and have the information.
In this case, it's the way the pieces of coconut land. So it's theoretically, according to their premise, the deity will influence the way these coconuts fall. Now, whether the deity influences it through you is another question, which it may very well. By invoking this deity, you then bring enough of its force into you that you almost subconsciously make them fall with a proper answer. But there are definitely some that have particular beings associated with the type of divination.
Right. But I'm still, in my view...
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I know. I'm just saying, in my view, it is a method to allow us to let that happen. It gives us a reason for it to be. So, Eve says, it is true what Ian is saying about what you put in your mind. The mind is powerful and will tell the brain to tell the body what to do, so stop that stinking thinking.
Yep.
And Eve says, I want to know the same as John was asking, which we've covered. Rita says, I didn't realize you should charge the runes. I think you can charge the runes. I don't know that you should.
Well, it was tradition, and traditionally they would do what they call blooding the rune at the time they charged it, which would be like pin drop of blood from the end of your index finger or something on it. Reddening the runes, blooding the runes, I think was what they called it. A lot of times they put the runes in red as a symbolic
of the blood. Yeah. So Eve says, Rita, the purpose of charging the runes is so that they know what they were created for. And Bobby says, I worked with runes. One must know what you're doing. It can lead to unbalanced energy events. Some runes are unstable. Bobby says, yes, Eve, many meanings too about runes. Agnes says, hi, is there, do you know how to make offerings to the Fae, and what offerings do they like? Traditionally, they like honey, rice, and milk, and pretty rocks. That would be what they like. Pretty stones. Julie says, hey, try to have a great, awesome sauce tattoo and get all the Futark runes in an armband tattoo. Now that can set you up for some interesting times later on. Trust me. I actually saw somebody in a shop, a sub shop, not Subway, but another sub shop, one day that was covered in runes, and I asked him what they meant, and I guess they were a family prayer, so I thought it was kind of interesting. Jono says, Agnes, milk and oats. Yep, I'm sure that would work too. Agnes says, thank you. Bobby says, that is true, Julia. Siofra, did you ever witness UFOs? People like to ask me that question, and I try not to answer it, but the answer is yes. I did, and it annoys the heck out of me. So, enough. I don't want to talk about it. Rita says, does anyone know about throwing bones? I've never thrown bones, but I know it's traditional in a lot of cultures where they collect bones and throw them and then read where they land. I had a group of symbols similar to runes. Some of them were runes and some of them were other things. That was a divination thing where you had a big circle that you threw them on and then read their position, and depending on where they landed in the circle, they were past, present, future, and that kind of stuff, which was interesting. I think all forms of divination can work because you trust that they're going to work, and it works. John says, sorry guys, you did not answer, which is fine. if you don't have to. When you do tarot, what decides what cards are drawn? If you don't know, then that is okay.
I can add something to that. The Golden Dawn would invoke the great angel Hua, Hua, before doing it to help them with the divination. And then Crowley did a little thing, and I haven't seen reference to where the information came from, but he gives specific deities or specific beings with a sigil associated with each tarot card. So tarot cards can also be treated as living beings with an individual personality, which is another way of dealing with the tarot. And in that case, you either create through thought forms or tap into the already created thought forms and energies out there associated with the tarot. And I might add, this is one reason to use traditional tarot cards and not ones with pictures that are not traditional, because you tap into all that energy of the thousands of years of development between them and magical use. So personally, I like a magical tarot deck. The Rider-Waite one is a good deck. The Boda deck, Builders of the Adytum, ones with more traditional symbols, because that's what carries the old magic and makes a connection to the old magicians and things. And so, systems of divination vary so much. That's the thing. So, depending on how you use them, you could also use tarot, though, just for your own clairvoyance as a means to see the future, as a mechanical method to get your clairvoyance going. So it kind of depends on how you learn to use them and how you do it too. And that's similar with other divination systems. They could vary a lot depending on the individual, or things like that. Clairvoyance can come through in a lot of ways. If you can let your clairvoyance come through, you can do divinations with almost anything. I can't myself.
So the reason that the tarot works the way it does, in my opinion, is that when you're shuffling the cards and you're focusing on the question, what it is you need to know, the more specific you can be about what that is, the more precise the reading will become. And it's your unconscious that picks the cards, the order in which they come out. Whatever spread you are going to be using, the cards know the spread you're going to be using because you have it in your mind, and then the cards will land, and then it's up to you to figure out how those cards in that position relate to the question that you asked. And there definitely is a lot of intuition involved in doing that, and sometimes it can get extremely precise when you start to see the patterns of relationships between past, present, future, and the different kinds of cards, whatever spread it is that you're using. So it's, again, a way of accessing your intuition and then spreading it out and looking at it, and then using the meanings that you know about the cards and what they are to sort of tune the answers to the questions that you're asking it. And they say you're not supposed to do 2 readings in a row for yourself, but I did that once with different and same results. Like when I did that, it was when I was with Rick, my daughter's father, and I was thinking of getting out of the relationship. I mean, I definitely was thinking it was time. And so I did one reading with not taking any specific action to get out of the relationship, and where would the relationship go. And it was full of chaos and storms and elemental things happening all around, like forces beyond my control, just tearing everything apart. And then I did another reading with the idea in mind that I was going to consciously choose to leave the relationship, and I had the same result, that we were not going to be in a relationship, but I had a lot more personal power that came through the cards, and it was very clear to me between those 2 readings that either way it was over, it was time. One way I'd be just flailing around in outer space, not knowing which way was up for who knows how long. And the other way, I was claiming my power and making a choice and a decision on a conscious level to have a different life. And I chose that one. So, It's always interesting trying to figure out how to answer some of these questions. Eve says, Rita, I learned a bit about reading the bones from a girl called the Witch of Wonderlust. Charlotte says, hi, Siofra and Ian. I'm wondering if you could recommend any stones, crystals to invest in to help with anxiety. Selenite, rose quartz, amethyst, and Larimar. Those would be my 4 recommendations off the top of my head. Bobby says, Wanderlust or Wonderbar? All right. Carolee says, all the things I like, milk, honey, rice, and pretty rocks. Yep. Bobby says, Siofra, do you dabble in voodoo before? I've done some of that kind of magic here and there, and I participated in a ceremony, a bimbe, which is a Santeria ceremony, which is related to voodoo. So I've had some experience with them, but I'm not a practitioner. I have that book, 5,000 Spells or whatever, and there's a lot of folk magic and voodoo kind of stuff in there. And I've utilized some of their approaches because they make sense to me. Eve says, Wanderlust. Kara says, rice pudding, too. Well, I'm sure they'd love that.
Yes, not only that, but some of the Hindu deities like the rice pudding really well also.
Yes.
Is that one for Lakshmi, maybe?
Maybe.
One of the ones?
I'd have to look it up.
But anyway, there's one of them that's definitely a rice pudding.
Finding out what they like is always a good thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is Lakshmi.
And really, if you're giving it with that intention in mind, like, if you get it wrong, they're probably not going to, slap you, because they can read your heart and they know maybe you didn't get the right book and you got the wrong information, but your heart is in the right place. So, Eve says rice pudding, ha ha. In nature for the fae. Yep. Gara says, no for me. And no plastic glitter, Eve says. Oh, glitter, they love the glitter.
Hey, dear.
What?
You missed one briefly that said those offerings to the fae, where do you offer them, on an altar or in nature?
Oh, I see that, okay.
It's both.
Yeah, you can do it both.
Nature, of course, I would think would be better. That would be my preference for the fae or a natural.
Well, what you can do is like make a special little spot in your yard or something like that for where you want to put them. You can have a nice statue there. You can do a little bird bath to invite, the winged people to come and play around because they like them. You can put some bells out, wind chimes or something to make it sound. They like the sound of bells. Put an herb garden there or something. I mean, there's lots of different little things that you can do that would invite them to come into the space as well as just giving them some offerings. So I would probably do it outside in nature, and you could have an outside altar. All right. Bobby says, Wonderblust. Or is it Wondermust?
Wonder bread?
I don't know. Eve says, the Fae enjoy perfectly baked tiny cakes and shiny things that have meaning. Eve says, yes, and thank you for not killing yourself, Ian. Yes, very good. Bobby says, Siofra, your opinions on Palo Santo. Santo, is it as good as sage? Well, I think it depends upon your traditions, and I use the sage that I grow myself, or, it's like, there's a lot of controversy on the Palo Santo stuff. I think it's a tree bark, I believe, and so there could be reasons not to use it, in the sense that, is it a limited supply? Is it being overgrown and over-harvested in order to supply New Age people with as much stuff as they think they want? I mean, really, when it comes to cleansing your space, you can just, use your thoughts and your finger, some steam and some water.
You can charge up a regular incense stick, too, if you need just a store-bought incense stick.
Right, so it's not, it has its natural properties of cleansing things, but then so does sage, which is a lot more plentiful and easy to come by. And you can grow your own in a pot. If you don't want to be taking it from someone else.
We have, like 6 pots full at the moment that are
5.
Coming up 5?
Yeah, 5 pots. I'm hoping. We'll see how they go. We have to harden them off in the wind. So we'll see if they survive or not. Luo says, my deck has images from Slavic mythology. They make sense to me more than any other. Well, yes, and as far as that kind of stuff goes, you're working with your own subconscious, so the things that fit you. Ian's talking about tapping into ancient energies and magic and stuff so that you don't have to create it all on your own. But if this is a personal divination system that helps you access that information in your own subconscious and superconscious,
Yeah, really,
then
there's
it
so
doesn't
much
matter.
stuff. That type of stuff we can only kind of speak in generalities.
Bobby says, me too, costs less money than sage. Palo Santo is less expensive. Carolee says, yep. Eve says, you can use any smoke to cleanse. Bobby says, sage is now ridiculously overpriced. So grow your own. I was like, yes, I tend to agree with that also, Eve. Carolee says, yes. Eve says, charge it. Bobby says, sage has negative ions, though. Oh, does it really, though? Just because someone said it and put it in a meme and posted it on Facebook, does it really?
But, I have a negative ion generator for an air filter. It works really well to get stuff out of the air and make it stick to the ion generator. You have to clean it out.
Yeah, and I don't think that sage actually does the thing that does.
But negative ions aren't really, they aren't bad for you.
Well, no.
They just have a negative electrical charge. It's not negative like,
Well, the meme was that negative ions create a purity of your airspace and will cure colds and kill viruses and stuff like that, which I don't know if that's true or not. That's just one of those things that someone thought sounded cool and put out there.
They do work good as an air filter, but if you get an air filter for a big room and you put it in a little bitty room, then it'll make your nose run and your throat burn a little bit. You can get too much, make ozone.
Yes.
Sorry.
Rita says, very helpful information on the tarot. Thank you both. And Bobby says, indeed, Eve. Eve says, we are a drop of the ocean, and the ocean in a drop. Connected. Yes, we are all connected. Bobby says, to burn good smoke that stays a while, it takes a blowtorch almost. That Palo Santos, I've tried Larimar. It's awesome. Yes, it is. I love it. I think I should mention that Faves like tarot cards also as an offering. Well, I don't think I want to put my cards outside, so I would say that would be an indoor offering if you're going to make one. Gift Happy said, how you understand similar experiences but slightly different perspectives is interesting, Ian and Siofra. Your hair is particularly beautiful today, Siofra, and the beaded dragon necklace too. Thank you. I made this. And I'm wearing my dragons on my wrists as well to go along with the dragon motif, apparently. Bobby says, the Witch of Wonder Bar, my favorite chocolate bar. Carrie, you see, where you get that? I made that. That's where I got that. It's my design. Rita says, do you guys use sound bowls? How effective are they in your opinion? I have one bowl that I have been able to use. One of those singing bowls. And it's the only one I found that I can play, and I don't know why. But I like it. It's on my altar. I use it, and it clears the air, and yeah, I don't know. I like it. Bobby says, super conscience? That is interesting. Carolee says, chocolate bars. I hate diets. Bobby says, me too, Kara. I hate artificial sugars. Oh yeah, I can't react. I react badly to them. Bobby says, Siofra, those offerings you do to the Fae, you put them on an altar or a specific nature place? Well, I just sort of communicate with them on a regular basis, and I have a wand that I built for the Fae. So I have flowers. I often put different flowers on my altar for them. Right now I'm getting ready the lilacs that I put up there are nice and dry at this point. I'm going to put them in a bag and finish them off and stuff like that. And I have these little bitty bottles that I can put flower essences in, or pieces of flowers. So I have the roses from my yard. I have some blue hydrangea that the blue fairy up north wanted me to pick and keep. And then I'm going to have the lilacs. So flowers, scents, when they come to visit me, they have wonderful smells that they bring with them. So I think that smell is something that they appreciate because of that. Yeah. Eve says, yeah, soul retrieval is absolutely something a shaman and only a shaman can do. Bobby says, soul retrieval is scary. Julia says, there's sage that is garden sage, and then there's white sage, which is indigenous to the Americas and was used for cleansing by some Native Americans, and then the garden sage, which does as well. Yes, and I'm now growing the white sage. I bought the seeds, and I've used the garden / herb sage, and with high success, and it works well. So Shay says, hello, Siofra, Ian, and all, on a split shift today, so I'm here until the end of your live stream today. Hi, Shay! Welcome! Bobby says, Siofra, did you ever get a gift from the Fae? I know I have, but I can't think of it. Oh, feathers. Well, there's one, the raven feather that I got. I'm pretty sure that had to do with the being in the power spot, and because it was a white feather when it fell from the sky and turned into a black feather when it hit the ground. And apparently glitter from time to time appears on my body. They helped me find my keys when they were lost and materialized them out in the middle of the air, which my daughter got to witness. We were both sitting on the couch and they just sort of appeared in the air and fell on the floor. So I'm pretty sure they helped with that. They've helped me with some healing and stuff like that. Yeah. So Kara says, I get migraines with artificial sugars, sweet and low equal can't do. Yeah, me neither. I get doomsday attacks from aspartame. Is horrific. Ian says, yay, Shay! Jacqueline says, I have a garden dedicated to the Fae. Yes, which is lovely. Rita says, I have one and have just been able to start making it sing. I understand completely. God, for my birthday last year has taken me a minute for sure. Yeah, and Jacqueline, today when I was taking my ritual bath, I used the fairy bell and had a conversation with a few of the fairies, so that was interesting. Julia says the white sage is what is usually referred to when speaking of saging. This is true. Bobby says, Siofra, I have seen black salt. Is it better than pink salt? I heard it is an awesome cleanser.
Well, black salt I'm familiar with is not natural, but it's created with the use of
ash.
Well, iron usually, and iron in the salt, like black salt for the 3/4 thieves vinegar. And that type of thing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, whatever works for you in your brain is what's going to work, and I don't have any preferences. I don't have any black salt, and right now I don't have any pink salt. I just have plain old regular salt, so. Orange says, hi, my friend is sick, and I was just wondering if you could wish him well. His name is Chris Peacock. Okay, I'll keep him in my thoughts. Eve says, I mean, I am sure that all different people can do soul retrieval. However, it is my personal belief that it is most successful when done with a shaman. It seems like it'd be more likely to succeed. Because anyone can say that they're doing it, right? Jacqueline says, I love white sage. I burn it whenever the trees drop limbs in the garden and break things. Cool. Julia says that Bobby, I'm resharing this, but black salt is powerful for sure, but it clears away all spirits around you for good or ill. It would be an emergency only resort for me. Jacqueline says, oh, that's awesome. Yes, it was. I had some fun in my bath today. I had interesting visitation, and I'm going to see, I'm preparing for the going on to the power spot for when we go for that 10 days when we're going to be just sitting there doing nothing, because that's where I saw so much, you know. I mean, it really opened a bunch of different sensors in my head of seeing the Fae folk that were there, that all different kinds that were there. So I'm trying to prepare myself as best I can to be as open as possible and see what more I can get.
Yeah, the last time we were there, I think it had an effect on me for about 6 months afterwards. My clairvoyance was hiked up, but then it went back to normal eventually.
Mine kind of stayed, which is kind of nice. But I'm sure I'll get another boost when I go up there. Eve says, Orange, I'm sorry to hear of the trouble your friend is experiencing. I wish them well. Rita says, do you know anything about having a snake as a spirit animal? Just seen mine the other night. Any suggestions for researching information on it? Well, I think that snakes are pretty intense goddess symbols for knowledge and transformation. As a spirit animal, it would mean being able to grow into your skin, shedding your old self and becoming new as you grow, and being willing to do that, because without that it feels uncomfortable. So it could also mean that when you're getting ready to transition into a more a deeper level or a different stage of development or something, you'll have that sort of tightness and feel uncomfortable and stuff like that. And the snake is there to tell you it's okay, that the old dry stuff is just that, and you have fresh new stuff underneath.
They've long been a symbol for wisdom in general.
Yeah. So I think it's a good symbol. Bobby says, thank you, Julia, for the information. Julia says, you are welcome. Carolee says, that is going to be awesome. Yes, it is. I am very excited. I keep going there into the future and being there. I've done that I don't know how many times now. Finding myself there and going like, oh yeah, I'm going to be here again. And I'll have all my crystals and my wands and everything else with me. Clear that power center back out again, and clean up the power spot so that it's all cooking in the right direction. And yeah, I was thinking, how many rocks am I going to bring this time? And yeah, I think I might have a box full of rocks I'm going to put in the van. We shall see. Bobby says, Siofra, did you come upon YouTube some videos about fays that turned real? I know lots of fakes out there. No, I haven't really seen those. And yeah, nowadays there's so many fake things. I wouldn't know if I would believe it or not, because I could probably, a personal computer nowadays can fake a video and fake a UFO landing.
One day I went around looking for on YouTube just for
levitation.
Yeah, just for entertainment on my part. For levitation, there are so many videos of people claiming they're actually levitating, but who obviously are just using standard stage magician tricks to do it, and proclaiming absolutely that they're levitating. So it's most of them I saw were pretty obvious how it was being done. They weren't even very tricky,
Yeah, if you're a really good stage magician, I can't see what you're doing, so. But that doesn't mean it's not a trick. So yeah, how can you know unless you're there in person?
However, to add to
that,
I might say, I do believe that levitation of a human is possible if you met the right, very rare person who is advanced to that level. But I don't think that probably none of them are out there making YouTube videos about it. Because I'm sure there aren't that many that can actually do it.
I just love the people that get out there and make a list of all of their credentials. That goes on and on and on and on and on. And I'm like, if you...
trillions of years?
Yes, and if you really know what you're doing, you don't need to brag, is my opinion about that. You have the knowledge, you are the knowledge, you share it or you don't share it, entirely up to you. But you don't need to make a list to impress other people about how intelligent, smart, spiritual, blah, blah, blah,
right.
blah, that you might be. So that is always...
That mostly proves you're not.
Yeah, that's always a definite, cautionary tale. When I see that, I'm like, okay, going somewhere else. I'm sorry, why are you manifested here if you've done all this time? Yeah, okay, whatever. So, Marisol says, hi, Siofra. Hi, everyone. So glad I caught the live stream. Bobby says, hello, Marisol. Hi, Marisol. Rita says, thanks again, guys. I appreciate you guys and your knowledge and wisdom, as well as your willingness to share with us. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
And we hope that it's useful, because we're all on such individual paths. And, the best thing we can do is to become better versions of ourselves, in my opinion. And that makes possibilities open up and gives me hope for the future. Eve says, that is why I said that you've got to charge the runes, because I don't know what they mean to anyone. I just know what they mean to me.
Well, the thing is, if you start a system of divination like that and don't apply any magical effort to it, you might be pulling up on the diviners of the past, and they might work just kind of out of the box to a certain extent, but you get large improvements with charging, especially with the runes. You put the meaning in each one, you charge it up with the drop of your blood, makes it very personal. Those would be your runes to use only for you.
I really wouldn't want them falling into someone else's hands.
Charging, you might get some things that operate just out of the box. Like, you could potentially make a talisman for somebody, and by your belief in that talisman and the person's belief in it that you give it to, you would get some sort of functionality. But setting it up with a purpose and putting the specific energy into it you want to use with a specific purpose for it, you get a lot more powerful of an effect.
Well, it also tells the other side that you're serious and you're committed, you're willing to put the energy and effort into it, and you know what you're doing. And that goes a long way.
Yeah.
It really does.
So it's well worth charging stuff, in my opinion.
Okay, so Carol Lee says a dead giveaway when they brag. Rita retracted her thingy. Shay says, Siofra and Ian, I'll bet you answered this already earlier in the stream, so sorry for the repetition. So excited you both are going to go to the power spot. Will you be doing a live stream next Sunday? Well, we're not going to the power spot until the 20th of August, so yes. When we go, we're going to be gone from the 20th to the 30th of August, so there's going to be 2 live streams we're going to miss.
Probably be a good thing to post something in the community
Yeah,
section.
we'll post it in the
that,
community bulletin board or whatever, but we will give you plenty of warning, because we will definitely be in a place without internet or cell phone service or any rays of anything. We could potentially see the International Space Station go overhead. That happened one time when we were there. It actually went right over, and I'm going to look that up and see if it might be having a path over the power spot while we're there. But yeah, we won't be doing live streams during that time. Bobby says, I had vivid premonition dreams about huge tidal wave. I asked other people and they had the same thing. Can dreams be shared or transmitted collectively or something? Yes, they can. And certainly when large events take place or are coming, that can happen. There was a computer program that was tracking what people talked about and stuff like that online, and supposedly was able to predict events based on the people, people sharing their dreams and what they were talking about, and got an idea of what might be coming down the pipe because of that. So that is a definite possibility. Julia says, I'm so happy that I found your channel, Siofra and Ian, and I'll be enlivening my Hecate statue on the new moon tomorrow. Oh, awesome. Perfect time.
Cool.
Your videos on that have really awakened and informed my intent. Great. That's cool. We thought it'd be interesting to just do a demonstration of us doing something without trying to explain it too much, but we still had to say what we were doing. But hopefully it was yeah.
And thank you to everybody who's given us likes on this video so far. It's appreciated.
Yes. It's encouraging.
Yes, it is.
Eve says, I always found it quite difficult to read cards for myself. It's like a pendulum. Your personal energy can absolutely affect the cards
That's true.
that pop out. Yeah, and it is, yeah. I mean, there's so many factors involved with that, like, your subconscious trying to short circuit what you're doing at certain stages so you don't find out too much too soon or whatever. Definitely.
Yes, I found a pendulum will work for me briefly until I get too focused on it, and then it'll do anything I want and I don't get true answers. If I get a question in and get it right off the bat before I'm
thinking,
collected and focused, before my brain gets affecting things too much.
Yeah, before your brain gets going on it.
But I usually get one thing answered and that's about it. Then I lose it for the rest of the...
And I'm the same way. It's like I start having too much fun making it do whatever I want. Go in a circle. Get in a bigger circle. Stop. Go in a straight line. Go in a bigger straight line. Stop. Change direction. Yeah. I get very into the fact that I can make it do whatever I want, but then I don't get anything answered that way. And I think that, like the last time I used the Ouija board asked me, why are you using this? And I thought, that's true. I don't need it anymore as a crutch to get answers, because the answers just come straight into my head. So that's actually the last time I used the Ouija board. That was a number of Samhains ago at this point. So yeah, it really depends. So it looks like we are at our 1.5 hour mark at this point.
Already, okay.
Already, this has been a great session. Enjoyed conversation. Think we got a lot of good things covered. Squeegee board? No, Ouija. But squeegee, maybe. But I guess it's time for us to sign off. And you guys know you can send me emails at siofrasmagicalcove@gmail.com. And I respond to my emails. You can also friend me on Facebook. Send me a message to let me know that you're actually a part of our group, I guess, of people. And Grumpy Alice says, have a great day. Julia says, send hugs and blessing energies to all that want them. Bobby says, thanks, Grumpy. Like you named Grumpy. Rita says, bye, guys. Have a good week. Lula says, have a great week. And yes, it's been absolutely lovely. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.